Well, welcome back. This is Marcia Sinitar again, and this is a continuation of an earlier interview that you'll find on our archive. And if you just look through it, you'll see the title, Ageless Joy. There is a short section in this part 3 that's repeated, and I left it in intentionally because I think it's worth repeating. And it has to do with the whole outreach of the archive, which is really to underscore my own life's work in talking about this idea of doing what you love, or vocation. Vocation meaning our spiritual development in the guise of, or actually, our talent, the gifts we have, our interior gifts, inborn, having nothing to do with our own virtue, but really something that allows us to experience the love that is God and comes to us in a myriad of disguises. It also relates to this idea of teleos, the word teleos meaning completion, our own completion, the wholeness that we are. And a caller, and I love these interviews that have live callers, he brings up the idea that the end part of life, or the latter part of life, aging, for example, introduces us to a new goal, religious goal. I actually don't think it's a new goal. If we look at children, again, if we look at spiritually developing children who have that interior awareness at an early age about what they are meant to do, who they are, defending that at all costs. This is teleos, the completion of who we are, the quest of expressing that, the intelligence that is perhaps not conventional. At any rate, I think it's worth repeating. I hope you enjoy it. I always look forward to your feedback. Enjoy.
Welcome back to the second and final hour of Amplify, a telephone talk show that looks at life from a religious perspective. Our guest this evening is Marcia Sinitar. We're talking about her latest book, Don't Call Me Old, I'm Just Awakening, Spiritual Encouragement for Later Life. We've been speaking in the themes that a lot of despair in life flows from our false beliefs that life is over just because we're older, and that those with a deep spiritual perspective sense that death is unreal. We know that life is eternal, and so we need to look for that spiritual awakening that comes from the awareness that indeed God is not only with us, but that God is within us. Marcia, I'm sorry that during the end of that first hour, you were still talking when we went to the news, and we were talking about the whole concept of hope. If you'd like to repeat that in any way.
As I was kind of long-winded there, but I think the bottom line is that you recover hope as you recover your delights, the things that you were born to understand, to do, to participate with. And I think it's important to locate these compelling interests before we retire, long before we retire.
And you point out, you write in your book, that this spiritual awakening is something that is progressive, much like we have learned from the stages of the spiritual life that many mystics have taught us, that it begins with insight, proceeds to purification, illumination, surrender, and finally union.
That's right, and I think the last caller, or one of the last callers, alluded to that when she said that no matter, just if you have a little bit of money, a little bit of security, you can create this contemplative or worshipful environment that allows that final, one psychiatrist called it final integration. However, most people, I would say the majority of people, want everything simple, and so they expect this to come easily, and it does come easily, but you have to keep at it. You have to keep reading the Bible. You have to keep around, you have to be with people who are encouraging you in your spiritual walk. And of course, you have to be kind of disciplined about it.
Mm-hmm.
But not everyone is religiously inclined. And so if we can look at someone like Albert Schweitzer, who loved music. That was sort of an avocation for him.
In fact, I think in one of your other books, as I recall, I'm remembering, he sang love songs to God, didn't he?
I think he did. I have a hard time remembering, so everything that I've written. But I remember one story about him, and I think I tell it in this book, that someone came and watched him. I think it was Norman Cousins, interviewed him late in life. He was 87 or 92 or something like that. And he was all bent over and arthritic as he approached the piano. And he started playing some of his favorite Baroque pieces, and as he was playing, he was completely transformed physically. He started to sit up straight, the color in his face came back, his fingers seemed to straighten out. And I guess the point I was making, and it relates to hope, is that we're never, never too old for that kind of passion, whether it's the enjoyment of a grandchild, or music, listening to music, gardening, our home, a pet, friends. The important thing is to keep it going.
Right. If we believe life is worth living, that belief will help to create the fact.
That's right, exactly. And every day, I don't care if you're 20 years old or 120, as a matter of fact, the centenarians do better at all of this than the younger people.
Mm-hmm.
What I started to say was every day I think we have to do a few things that we enjoy doing. And it's not so much that we go to a concert, let's say, but that we play music in the home. Or while we're washing the dishes, we do it in a way that gives us joy. It's so simple.
Yes. And I love this question that you posed. If I didn't know how old I was, how old would I feel?
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, you all know, we all know people who look pretty old, but really, when you have a heart-to-heart talk with them, they tell you they don't feel any older than 30 years old.
Yes.
And that's the real person. That's the real core self, the heart that never dies. Never ages, never dies, always loves.
Again, we're going to open our phone lines. If you'd like to join us with your comments or questions, you can call us locally at 412-333-KDKA or on the Choice One Communications toll line, which is 1-877-855-KDKA. Now let's go to Paul. Paul, you're on Amplify on KDKA.
Oh, hi, Father Ron. I'm wondering, is there a goal to the second half of life? Is there a goal to old age?
You mean a different one than the first half?
Right. What I'm getting at is the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung said that the goal of the second half of life is our death. And I think what he meant by that, it's a very religious goal. Something related to that. He claimed that the only cure for a midlife crisis, in other words, that transition from the initial goal where we set our feet in the world, get established. He said the only solution to a midlife crisis was to adapt a religious attitude toward life and make that descent to our death. And he didn't mean, that's an end, but I just wondered if y'all had any comments about that, and I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you. Marcia?
Beautiful question, and I think if we could say there was a goal, it would be, for me anyway, union with the divine, that ascent of consciousness where we meet the Holy Spirit or Christ or the God of our understanding, however a person would language it. And the way I tried to express it in this book, actually I was quoting a French monk who talked about that eternity that I said, I quoted Exodus, and he said, while we are alive, we can come into what is going to be our occupation in eternity. And I think that's our job. And what is our occupation in eternity? Well, maybe it will differ from person to person, individual to individual, but certainly it is to have a relationship with God, a communion with God, all glory to God. It's just as simple as that.
You, it was a previous interview. You said that Albert Einstein sang songs to God. St. Francis listened for angels.
Yes.
And then there was a quote in this book. I'm not remembering who it was, but it was a psychiatrist who said that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, but you can an old person, because that's the difference between dogs and people.
Isn't that beautiful?
We can learn, we can awaken at any age.
That's right. So however we're going to phrase this, and I love what the last caller said about Jung's discussion, but I would say a little differently. I don't know if it's death that we need to encounter or grapple with so much as encountering eternity. Once you have that true encounter with the dazzling ultimate reality while you're alive, the sting of death is gone, and you realize that you live forever.
Right. You also write about Albert Schweitzer, who believed that as long as he had a job to do and a good sense of humor, no disease could find a home in his body, and music was his medicine.
That's right. That's exactly. That's a beautiful way of putting it. That his own love of music, of his work as a healer, and I think he was more than a doctor. I think he was a healer. These things would prevent disease from finding a place in his body. I love the way he put that.
And you also point out that if we're going to look at what might be happening during that later part of our life, that age teaches us that it is our duty to be and to do what we love.
Yes, that's right. And this is a continuing theme of mine. I thought maybe when I first started writing this way that it was too idealistic. And lo and behold, the older I get, the more certain I am. And I do not exaggerate when I say that the love that we have for something, whatever it is, whether it's a garden like Agatha Christie, who used to talk to her characters, Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot, she used to talk to them in the garden while she was walking about. This giving of oneself to the future comes only through love. I don't know another word for it, and of course I'm not speaking about romantic love. I'm speaking about the agape love.
Mm-hmm. And you point out that when we talked about education, that everything and everyone is our teacher, and there's so much that we need to learn, but is it not also true that there's much that we need to unlearn?
That's right. You know, even this conversation where we're kind of working through sorting out some of these issues with each other, I think that's part of an unlearning, where we're throwing away the things that are not useful to us. For example, we talked earlier about younger people in the aging process, and one of the points that I'm making is how important it is to learn how to use our leisure time while we're young. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, we're unlearning the false commitments, the false gods that we've been given by our parents and teachers and society. This is a lifelong process. There's no such thing as, okay, I learned that lesson, it's over now. No, they return, they come back. And we have to rise to a new level of mastery. And as I was saying earlier, mastery means walking it out in our life.
Mm-hmm.
Like my grandmother, who in her 80s had many challenges, I think very much like you were talking about your mother. She had many, many challenges, and she kept bringing her optimism to a higher level in daily life. She played cards with her friends. She went dancing at a club that she belonged to. She played bridge, and she was a joy for her friends to be around. But she worked at it.
Mm-hmm. Let's go to our line. Good evening. You're on Amplify on KDKA. Ernest?
Yes, sir. How are you tonight?
Fine, thank you.
Good. Do people who seem to adhere to the words of Jesus seem to live longer, tend to live longer?
Okay, let's try to answer that.
I don't have the answer to that. I'm sorry. When we look at the centenarians, who are the longevity models for us, we do find certain Christly attitudes, if I can just mention those, and maybe that'll be sort of an answer. For one thing, they tend to be very forgiving. These tend to be individuals who, for example, came through the Great Depression, 2 world wars, World War II, the Korean War, whatever, and they found a way to reconcile any harm that was done to them or their families, and now they're giving back to the future. These are contented individuals. They tend to be gentle individuals. They don't tend to be combative. I remember looking at a film of centenarians that was on HBO called The Century of, I don't know what it was called, but it's on every once in a while. And one woman who had lost her family, she had lost her eyesight, she was still working, she was over 100, she's working, if you can imagine, in some capacity. And she was crying about how beautiful life was, and and all she said was, "I wish I could do it all over again. It is so beautiful." To me, that's Christly.
Right, and there are many studies that have shown from different interviews that I've had over the years that people of faith do indeed live longer lives.
Yes, that's true.
It does not protect them from pain and suffering, but nevertheless they do live longer lives. I think there's no question about that. The majority of us, you point out to us, feel that life is worth living when we are contributing to others, and so it's never too late, as we were speaking just a moment ago, to get involved in doing what it is that we love.
Exactly.
And you say that's part of what you're doing, working with professionals, and that all of us should be finding something wonderful to love in our lives.
And this goes back to younger people. I would have to say that all of my life, I have looked to people older than myself to tell me stories, maybe their wisdom, but I did not want lectures. And even today, I try not to lecture younger people because I think they get parent deaf and teacher deaf. They turn us off. But if we are simply present with another human being, that is a tremendous gift. And we know that young people today, parents are working harder than ever, holding 3-4 jobs, single parenting much of the time, young people facing a job market that's insecure. How wonderful if in our trip to the market where they're bagging our groceries, we just offer them appreciation for who they are.
Mm-hmm.
That's a gift.
You're right, and you also write that loving absorption with whatever matters most to us is a great healer because it enables us to tap into a pure regenerative force.
I do believe, this is going to sound kind of odd, I do believe that this positive engagement with something that matters to us is probably the only true healer, because I think God comes to us in the form of our loves. He comes in the despair that we have as hope.
Mm-hmm.
It's the bird in our heart, that's singing despite the pain, that's talking about eternity, despite the fact that we know this life is a mortal coil, so to speak. But I do think that God comes in various disguises, and we know God is love. And when we're touched with hope, with passion, with caring for another, with giving of ourselves and our care to the future, appreciating the little flower that's blooming in the sidewalk, this is God.